It's time to get all set for Sunday, a podcast for busy and distracted Catholics with your hosts, Scott Williams and Jeff Traylor.
When I hear the coffee brewing, I think, what the heck we doing? Because I got barely any sleep last night. As the diaper bag I pack with Hot Wheels dollies and some snacks, I say a prayer there'll be a seat in the crime room this time. It's alright, cause I'm all set for Sunday. It's alright, cause I'm all set for. It's alright, cause I'm all set for. It's alright, cause I'm all set for Sunday.
Welcome to All Set for Sunday, a podcast for busy and distracted Catholics to be a little more prepared for Sunday Mass, un poquito more prepared for Sunday Mass. How do you say it in Spanish, Father?
Un poquito más preparado para misa dominical.
That was close.
Duh. Obviously.
Father Dufresne, how are you today?
I'm great. It's good to have you
I forgot
guys.
to introduce you, Jeff. I'm sorry. I got too
My
excited
host,
about the
Jeff
Spanish.
Traylor. Hey, Jeff. How you doing?
How are you, Jeff?
Great, man. We're on the road again.
Yeah.
Like, we're a road trip podcast
You can
now.
call us roadies.
Yes. It would be helpful if we had roadies, actually.
Road beers.
No, those we don't want those.
Oh, different roads.
That's not
Got
a
it.
good thing. Shouldn't do that.
I do not recommend that.
No, not at
I'm
all.
against that.
But we're on the road again here at St. Philip Neri Catholic Church. Beautiful office of Father Dufresne.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, we were just talking about St. Philip Neri in this neighborhood and Father Dufresne a couple episodes ago. We were bragging about the great work he's doing around here and about how everyone knows him, including the people at the liquor store. So, the bourbon shop. So.
Got to smell like the sheep, right?
Yes.
Yes. Indeed.
And your
Hallelujah,
sheep
hallelujah.
smell like oak aged spirits.
Some do, indeed.
All right. How are your spirits today, Jeff?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't complain.
Okay.
It's been a good week. What?
You're
And Scott, and with your spirits?
My spirits were also good.
your segue game has like gone to the next level. That was
Yeah.
That was
He
awesome.
doesn't need that.
I didn't see that
He
coming.
he doesn't need to hear that.
Father Dufresne, how's your heart?
I feel like it's settled. It's at peace.
Yeah.
I'm in a familiar place. You know, here in this office where I usually prepare for All Set for Sunday, and now we're actually just recording here. It's fantastic.
That's wonderful.
It's a cool office. You've done a good job.
Did you pick the colors?
Thanks. I did.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Do you know what color it is?
I forget the particular shade of blue
Sherwin-Williams.
Sherwin-Williams that it is. I'm sure I have a color swatch somewhere, but this is the color of my room at Holy Rosary.
Oh.
And it's so calming.
It really is.
When I repainted that, all of this got destroyed a couple of years ago. I think
What
we
happened?
talked about it. There was a water
Flood,
pipe
right?
that broke in the ceiling on Christmas evening, and no one was here till the next day.
Oh my goodness.
But anyway, so when I saw this paint color at Holy Rosary, when I moved into my room, I was like, I just want everywhere I go to be this color. I mean, blue for the Blessed Mother.
What is this
very
specific
calming.
blue called?
It's somewhere around the area. Like it might be dockside blue. There were like
Doxology
four.
blue.
We
that's good.
should change it
Thank
to
you.
that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well done.
I'm out.
But yeah, we were between four of them, and I can't really remember the name.
I like it. It's great.
All right.
But classic signs of a priest's office. So there's we got boxes of candles. We have an abundance of aged out missals.
Well, hang on. Okay, yeah, there is
Yeah.
one. Well, it's not technically aged out. That can still be used.
Who's this couple getting married in this photo?
That is the wedding of Andrew and Sarah Matthijs.
Oh,
So
old pals?
yeah, I worked with Sarah. She was the campus minister at Cardinal
Oh,
Ritter.
Sarah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know Sarah.
So
She's great.
Sorry, Castillo.
Yeah.
Formerly.
Formerly
I think that was the first mass I celebrated at St. John's.
Oh, wow.
And it was, they gave me a big picture because they knew I was geeking out that I got to have mass at St. John's. So,
Hashtag work goals.
yeah, that was on my bucket list for sure.
awesome. All right. 2-minute drill?
Yeah, let's do it. 25th Sunday in ordinary time here. It's, well, I don't know, 25th, nothing special. The quarter.
I think the annual joke that we make around this time is that this ordinary time you can rent a car.
Yes. There you go.
Yeah.
This
The
is
Jubilee ordinary time.
the
Yeah,
silver
25th.
Sunday of ordinary time.
Exactly.
Isn't that it?
Is silver 25? I don't know.
I don't know.
Actually, I got a few years to figure it out.
Last week was the golden week of
Yeah.
the year in ordinary time.
So 25th Sunday in ordinary time. Our first reading comes from Wisdom, chapter 2. And it starts off quoting the wicked. And all I could think when I was reading it is like a Boston accent. Like like
Sorry.
the wicked say. But it doesn't mean wicked in the same way they do. It talks about how the wicked plot against the righteous. They're annoyed by the virtuous life of the righteous and his claim to be God's child. They plan to test him with cruelty and humiliation, and they hope to discredit that trust in God. But their intent is to test his faith through this harsh treatment and see if God intervenes on his behalf. So watch out for the wicked. So that reading was wicked awesome.
I would try to do my best Boston accent, but it would not go.
Let's go.
No.
Come on. No.
Good day, mate.
Don't pack by the
It's
weekend.
my favorite. Don't park your car at the wicked's yard. Our responsorial psalm this week, the Lord upholds my life. It's a solid. I'll remember it, but not a banger.
Yeah.
For sure. The second reading then comes from James, chapter 3:16.
James 3:16.
James 3:16. The lesser known 3:16. If you see somebody holding up a James
6:3.
3:16 sign, really pay attention.
6:3.
There might be something going on there.
3:16 the lesser.
3. That's good.
Yeah.
Lesser known, not lesser important.
Yes,
Maybe less. I don't know.
maybe.
Let's
We
find
don't-
out, Jeff.
You don't know.
Back to you.
James warns that where there's envy and selfish ambition, there will be disorder and evil practice. He contrasts earthly wisdom, which is full of jealousy and conflict, with heavenly wisdom, which is pure, peace-loving, considerate, and sincere. That's the kind of wisdom we could use on this podcast for sure. He explains that conflicts and quarrels arrive from selfish desires within people, and that people fail to receive what they need because they ask with wrong motives, seeking to indulge their desires rather than seeking God's will. That part hit a little hard. Felt a little like an attack,
Yeah.
but very good. And then our gospel this week is Mark chapter 9, 30 to 37. Jesus and his disciples left from there and began a journey through Galilee, but he did not wish to anyone to know about it. He was teaching his disciples and telling them, the Son of Man is to be handed over to men, and they will kill him. And 3 days after his death, the Son of Man will rise. But they did not understand that saying, they did not understand the saying, and they were afraid to question him. They came to Capernaum, and once inside the house, he began to ask them, what were you arguing about on the way? They remained silent. They had been discussing among themselves on the way who was the greatest. Then he sat down and called the 12 and said to them, if anyone wishes to be first, he shall be the last of all and the servant of all. Taking a child, he placed it in their midst. Putting his arms around it, he said to them, whoever receives one child such as this in my name receives me, and whoever receives me receives not me, but the one who sent me.
Woo!
The gospel of the Lord.
Is
Wait,
this a trick?
do we?
Are we getting
what are we supposed
tricked?
to do?
Are we supposed
Did Jeff get anything wrong?
I think you rocked it. You killed it.
Hey, thanks.
It was awesome. I just
It was
want.
wicked good.
I do have one comment though. Like if Scripture feels like an attack, it's probably because you're wicked.
Yeah.
the-
No,
yeah.
I know it. I know. Don't worry.
But we're all wicked, right? That's the.
Yes.
I mean, that's really what.
Yeah.
That's what the gospel.
I
reminds us of.
forgot before we got started. So before we dive in here, I just want to say hello to Mrs. Dufresne,
Hi, Mrs.
one of my
Dufresne.
favorite listeners
Mom.
ever of all time. But we got your boy here, and I know she's listening. Hope you haven't fallen asleep yet, but
Well, I haven't talked that much.
no. Anyway,
All right.
and your dad. If I don't know if he listens, maybe he does, but
Mrs. Dufresne, tell Mr. Dufresne we say hello.
yeah, tell
Hi,
him.
Dad.
Nudge him real fast and tell him. All right.
All righty. Well, now you can talk some more. What are you preaching on this weekend?
Well, it feels a little bit like Jesus has repeated himself, doesn't it? So, like last week, we heard about how Jesus talked about. Well, first he like asks, "Who do you say that I am?" And then he says, "The Son of Man must be killed and then rise on the third day." And Peter doesn't like that, right? So And then we're back. It's Sunday Mass, and some people are probably going to be in the pews like, is Father reading the gospel from last week? Right? And which, I mean, sometimes that happens because, you know, you get tired and you don't look at the book or whatever. But he's repeating himself and saying the Son of Man is to be handed over to men, and they will kill him. And 3 days after his death, the Son of Man will rise. And this time, nobody like contradicts him, but they don't understand what he's saying, is what Mark tells us, right? So why is Jesus repeating himself? Well, he's repeating himself because this is such an important message. And, you know, I was really privileged to go on a men's retreat that was in Spanish that was held here in the diocese. And I mean, I had been on the retreat before, and this time I was more helping as a priest on it, giving talks, hearing confessions, things like that. But I'm
Like
always
you had been as a participant before?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, you know, as much as a participant as you, like that time I still heard confessions, but I was just sitting, listening to the talks instead of giving them.
Got it.
And what strikes me about this retreat every time I go on it is that it's just the kerygma, right? Like which means the basic proclamation of the good news, right? The basic proclamation of the gospel. And so what is presented to these men on this retreat is like, one, like we are created by God. Two, we have sinned and we have fallen short and we're wicked. How do you say that again?
Wicked.
Wicked.
And hey,
Is that it?
yeah,
You were there.
nailed it.
As long as I can say it right after you, I'm good.
But then
We're wicked evil.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then we're redeemed, right? And then what is our response going to be? So like people may have heard this like these 4 words that summarize the kerygma: created, captured, redeemed, response, right? Which I think is like Acts 24 ministries or something. Like I just want to make sure I'm not plagiarizing without giving any credit. But how can you plagiarize the kerygma?
That's a good point.
But anyway, this retreat is just that proclamation. And then I've seen, to varying degrees, I've just seen the transformation that happens in these men. And just men who are, they're married in the church, they're going to mass, like their kids receive their sacraments, all these things. And outwardly, everything might seem like it's like we're good, we're all right. But they hear this message of God's love and how much we need to be redeemed. And they just respond in these ways that are totally unexpected and super beautiful. You know,
Any
can't-
particular stories you can share?
well, not a whole lot I can share, but I think what I will say is one thing that's been my desire as a priest who serves in Hispanic ministry for a long time is to see, and I think this is maybe a universal thing in the American church, but in my context in particular, I desire to see men like take the leadership roles in the parish and in the family that like God created them for, right? Like I desire to see fathers who are not just present but silent, but fathers who like can bring up their children in the faith, fathers who are going to confession. You know, a lot of times the confession line is just more women than men, right? And a lot of times the communion line, especially in the Hispanic community, is more women and children than it is men. And so when the thing that's remarkable and beautiful about it is to see men who, yes, work very hard, like love their family, sacrifice for their family, but then when they understand I'm loved by God, I'm redeemed by Christ, and I want to imitate Christ and be Christ to others. And when you hear that, so there at the end of the retreat, I can't share this. There are some men. Each one of the men is invited to share a testimony about like how were you when you got here? What did you encounter? And then what are you going to change? And one of the men in his testimony just said, you know, when I got here, I was pretty macho. Like I was trying to be like a man's man, right? And now I'm a man like in Christ. And it's just like when you hear men say that as that really choked me up in the moment. I might actually need the Kleenex because like, it's just amazing to hear that. And so this retreat reinforced for me just how important it is that we revisit the kerygma, even frequently as preachers. And so I think seeing Jesus repeat this message for the second week in a row, I really want to repeat, what is the basic message of the gospel, right? That we are, like, the whole universe is created by God, right? That the universe has fallen because of the fall of Adam and Eve, right? And so we all suffer from original sin. We all are wicked, right? We all sin. We're all in need of redemption. So it's like, it's not that we're all okay, right? And then, but what's the good news after that? Well, we're redeemed by Christ, and Jesus Christ is the one redeemer of all mankind, ordained by God, by the one God. And Christ has shown us this unique path to salvation, right? Christ himself says, I am the way and the truth and the life. And so this redemption calls us to a response. And I think that's kind of where this homily leads is, what is our response? How are we going to respond to God's love? Because God has shown us his love in Christ, like on the crucifix, he pours out every last drop of blood, like for you out of love. What's your response going to be? And I think that that's going to be kind of where I lead to, if that makes sense.
I think it's an interesting thing to hear you talk about this message specifically in the context of this men's retreat. And I wonder, I think it's something that needs to be talked about more in our faith, is that like the ultimate image of masculinity in our lives should be Jesus Christ and his actions and his life and the sacrifice and his so if we're not drawn to that, we're not being masculine. We're being, like you said, macho is a different thing, right? But if we want to be protectors of our family, if we want to be fathers, if we want to be leaders, there's the most ultimate image possible, right? And in fact, when we see others in the Gospels behave in those macho ways, it's usually in a story where they're about to be rebuked or corrected by Christ, right?
Yeah.
But I wonder, so if you're giving a homily like this, would you take the approach of hey, everyone's here to hear this homily, but I want to speak to the men of this parish? I think that's challenging, but I also think there's incredible depth in hearing, in a father hearing, being challenged in front of his wife and children, right? Or in front of his family, and in other people hearing that as well, to set that challenge for them. So I don't know if that's your plan, but
yeah, I mean, you just basically translated the first line of my homily from 2 weeks ago into English.
Oh yeah.
That's what I did. When I got back from this retreat, it wasn't the same, kerygma based that I'm thinking for these scriptures, but I did just say today I'm preaching to the men. And it's not because I want to exclude all the rest of you
to come up and all sit on the floor in the front, the children's gospel. Yeah.
No, that already
thing to do to.
I had
and then
already,
all these poor men achy joints trying to stand up after.
I had already given the children's homily, so that was the English homily. So at the Spanish Mass, but no, I think that is my approach more and more is to just say, I want to invite, church is not for the priests, the grandmas, and the wives. Mm-hmm. Church is for you. Christ is for you. And I think what I perceive to be the most transformative thing for men when they encounter the kerygma, and again, I know more than just men listen to this podcast, so I think this is true for all of us, but
your mom.
Hi mom. Is that the message of the kerygma says that God, who created us and was rejected by us when we were captured by the snare of the enemy, right, in sin, that he comes down from heaven. He lowers himself. He humbles himself to become human and to dwell among us. So I think so many men, so many of us Christians are kind of convinced that my circumstances are so messy. My circumstances are so displeasing to the Lord, that he doesn't want to mess around with my stuff. a lot of people treat us priests that way too. Like, well, I'm going to smile when I see Father, and oh, everything's great, everything's fine, but like things are falling apart in the house, and we don't want Father to come over and see this, right? Like, but it's when people have that experience of, oh, Christ descended into my human misery, my human brokenness, my human messiness, not like by becoming sin, not by sinning himself, obviously, but by being made sin and suffering the punishment for our sin, right? Paying the debt of redemption, like that. That is what kind of flips the light bulb for people.
Yeah. I think it's difficult because nobody teaches you how to do this. Like, I remember, like, of all the things that I've prepared for, like, no one teaches you how to pray with your spouse or to pray for your family or to lead your family in prayer. I'm thinking in the world of like being macho for Christ and what that looks like and how you have to live vulnerably. Like, I like a good template. I like being able to say, like, this is the way that you do this. Plug in the things that make sense for you and your family, and run with it. But like, I don't think that's done really well. But the Kerygma, I've heard once, is like a really great template for how to evangelize. Like, if you're able to share who you were before you knew Jesus Christ, what that encounter looked like, and what your life looks like after living a life of Jesus Christ, like, that's one of the most powerful things that you can ever do. And then fourth is inviting them to come along on that journey. But what do you say to somebody that like says, I hear this call, I hear that you're calling me out on this, but how do I actually live that out in my family?
Yeah, I mean, I think the very first thing to make sure is like ask yourself, am I get a list of the precepts of the church, or get a good examination of conscience, right? And like make a good confession, make sure you're going to confession regularly, you're receiving Holy Communion, going to Sunday Mass. Like, those are the basics, right? And then and daily prayer. And I think there are 3 questions that we can ask ourselves every day as Christians. But if I'm talking to the father of a family, or a young man that wants to be, a man who's on fire for Christ, like, ask yourself these 3 questions every day. Like, how has God loved me today? How did I respond? And how am I going to respond better tomorrow? Right? It's like this little mini examine. And I think that, going all the way back to, I think it's been a while since I've taken philosophy, but I think it's Socrates that says, like, the unexamined life is not worth living, right? And I think the examine, when you add that into your prayer routine, you're actually asking God to like help you to see where you need to grow in holiness, where you need to embrace sacrifice more, where you need to love better. And that's a very powerful thing to do, just to accept, part of the macho mentality is it's self-reliance. It's, I'm going to do this. I'm a man, so I can handle this. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to solve this problem. And you can't solve the problem of your own salvation. You need Jesus Christ for that.
No, it can be detrimental to it. In fact. And I would even say, like, add to that challenge to what Scott was talking about, like, about spouses praying together, is like, if you're going to do that examine, like, share those things with your spouse too. Like, be humbled, share those things, share where you're broken, because you're in this together. You're doing these things together. It's important. I heard on a really great podcast recently, somebody talk about, why is it
Was it this one?
No, it wasn't.
Oh.
It was a different one. It was a couple talking about, like, how is it that, like, a couple can, like, be naked in front of each other, but the idea of praying together is, like, that's scary. Like, we're at our most vulnerable. We can do that all day, and, like, that's not all day, but, like, you get what I'm saying. But it's a profound statement that really has stuck with me and challenged me in that way of, and my wife and I, to start praying together more often and, like, doing those things. And because it is like, I can pray with my kids all day long, but there's something, like, I don't know, there's just that barrier there. And it was a great challenge for me, but I think it speaks to this same idea of, like, that's the truly manly thing you can do, is, like, my responsibility as a husband is to lead my wife to heaven. But like prayer is as good of a way to do that as any. But also sharing my own faults and my own flaws and like, and those things that I'm struggling with and those joys that I have in my life and making sure that that's like a part of our routine. So, yeah.
All right. Ready for some dumb questions?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I've got one.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Oh,
I got all kinds.
You've
but-
got a
Okay.
page.
I've
Well,
got
I've got a write-in. We had a write-in from a listener, which is really awesome. I always love when that happens. Not for you specifically, so
Okay.
don't panic.
I've got.
Was it my mom?
No.
Okay.
I have one that I've been waiting for Father Dufresne to come back for a while.
That's right.
And we only have probably time for one, unless
Okay.
you have a burning one to do.
No, I'll save this one for next week. But
amazing.
I do have.
Have you
go ahead.
ever had someone disruptively attend mass at, let's say, maybe a church in downtown Indianapolis on Mother's Day? Hypothetically speaking.
That's a very specific, dumb question. That seems like a very intelligent question. I don't know that this fits in this segment, but I don't know if I
Or
was just
are you a
talking to my
liar?
microphone. I'm not a liar. So I think you're requesting that I tell a story from Mother's Day.
Yes.
So I was celebrating Mass on Mother's Day, and was super excited because Mom and Dad. It was not the first time they came to St. Mary's, but they were at Mass at St. Mary's, which was always beautiful to have them there when I celebrate Mass. And I was giving my homily, and I see someone walk through the back doors of the church in the middle. And you notice things when you're giving the homily, but I keep speaking, and then I notice that this guy is wearing like a shawl over his head, and he's got kind of like olive skin and dark hair and a beard, and he's wearing a white robe, like ankle length robe. And so I started thinking, like, am I being evaluated today? Like, did Jesus just show up to listen to my homily? Like, I'm a little.
He also has a clipboard and a pen.
I'm like, am I starting to see things? Like, I was a little bit worried that I'm like having this vision. I'm like, I gotta
like a
finish this
fever
homily.
dream in your homily.
Well, and then I see him walk back, and then someone else looks at him. I'm like, okay, I'm not the only one that can see him. So he walks along the back of the church and up and sits right in the front pew.
Like the front pew?
Like the front pew.
Which was open because we're Catholic.
Hey, there are a few pews open
Yeah.
at St. Mary's at English Mass, but he's like looking at me with a piercing stare. I mean, like disturbingly piercing stare for the rest of the homily, and I'm just trying to pretend like everything's okay, like preaching to everybody.
Yeah.
And I just see everyone else like looking at him, like, "What's going on? What's going on?" And so anyway, I go back over to the chair. We pray the creed. He stands up when everyone stands up. He sits down when everyone sits down. And
So he knows what's going on.
he's at least
Seemingly,
imitating
yeah.
like what other people are doing, looking around. And then I start thinking, there's nobody between me and this guy. Like, and there had just been a couple of weeks before, or a week before, there was this big, like, there was a church shooting or something. And I started thinking, like, am I in danger? Like, this guy's wearing a long robe, and he just, something is off about him.
Your dad was there, right?
Yeah.
You're good.
And my mom was there too.
Yeah.
And so,
Definitely good.
I'm just saying. I
yeah.
bet your dad. He had you on lock. Anyway,
so I go to the altar for the preparation of the altar, and the guy sits down, and he's just staring at me again. And I go and get the gifts, and I'm like really close to him, and I'm like looking at him, like, and he's staring at me. And
But to be fair, is everybody's staring at you?
not like that. Not like piercing stare.
Yeah.
And so I'm through the Eucharistic prayer, and I get to the words of consecration. And I just started realizing through the first part of the Eucharistic prayer, like, well, you know what they say, celebrate this Mass as if it's your first Mass, as if it's your last Mass, as if it's your only Mass, right? And I'm like, well, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen here, Jesus. Like, there's nobody, like, I was like, I can't signal anyone to call the cops. Like, I don't want to cause a scene because he's not being disrespectful. And I get to the Eucharistic prayer, and I'm just like, Jesus, you know what? Whatever happens, happens.
yeah, because
Like,
you can't be distracted then.
Yeah.
You got to lock in.
so I'm just like, if this guy's going to do anything to hurt me, like, whatever, like, just don't let him hurt anybody else, right? Like, and come to find out, my mom is like there ready to like jump over the pew. She was going to jump over like 2 pews and like hit him with her purse or
Heck
something.
yeah,
I
she
don't
was.
know. Everyone's on high alert.
Yeah.
And so we get to communion, and I'm nervous he's going to like come up for communion because I mean, you know, I don't know if he's Catholic. I don't know if he's not, and he didn't
Jesus.
kneel. Maybe he's Jesus. Does Jesus receive communion?
Would he kneel to himself?
Does Jesus receive communion? Oh,
At the Last Supper. Anyway, so we give communion. He doesn't do it. He sits there, doesn't come up for Holy Communion. I give the final blessing, and I go. And now is the hard part because I need to turn my back to him to genuflect before I leave church. So I did like the quickest, like half turn genuflect, jump back up, turn around, and he starts to walk to the end of the first pew.
Oh,
As I'm turning
Towards
around,
you?
and I'm just ready, I'm about to throw the hardest elbow I've ever, I don't know what's going to happen.
I wish I was a bishop right now.
And he just stops.
give me that processional.
Yeah, I'm
cross.
like, can I have a crocher just for a moment,
Just
please?
1 minute.
No, thank you, actually. One parish is enough. I don't need 130. So he stops, and he just stares at me again, and I just processed out. It's like the fastest recessional I've ever been a part of.
because you're ready to turn around and figure out what's going on.
Yeah. I'm ready to call the police. Well,
Yeah.
the police were outside, but once I got outside, he went up in the sanctuary and he said, and a parishioner went up and said, you know, you can't be up there. He said, well, I want you to tell the priest that I am the Antichrist. And then he walked out of church. So apparently we got a visit from the Antichrist. He drives an Audi, in case anyone's wondering.
I knew it.
But yeah, that was a little unsettling. I think more unsettling for my mother than for me. I don't
Yeah.
think she was quite as ready to see me go straight from the mass to the heavenly banquet as maybe I was at that time. But yeah, so yes, the answer to your question is yes.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
All right.
But
we-
if this truly was the Antichrist, you showed him Jesus and you put it right there. So good for you.
All right.
Yeah, from what I understand, it wasn't the real Antichrist.
Yeah, either way, you showed him Jesus.
That's right.
All right. Thank you, Father. That was such a joy.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Thanks
your
for coming.
hospitality.
You guys
Good
are
luck
welcome
on your
anytime.
homily this weekend.
It's alright, cause I'm all set for. It's alright, cause I'm all set for. It's alright, cause I'm all set for Sunday.